My parents' golden child, my sister, cheated on her husband, and my family demanded I cancel my wedding because of it. When I refused, they showed up at my in-laws' house. This is a throwaway account for obvious reasons. I, 32M, recently got married to my wonderful wife, Lily, 30F. The wedding day was perfect, but the events leading up to it and the fallout afterward have been incredibly stressful, primarily due to my parents and my older sister, Sarah, 35F. The initial problem began about 10 days before the wedding. Sarah's husband, James, a genuinely decent guy, discovered some messages on her phone. These weren't ambiguous texts, they were explicit conversations between Sarah and a man who, unfortunately, was a mutual friend of theirs. The texts detailed potential meeting places, times, and thinly veiled plans. There was no question about the intent, even if they hadn't actually met up yet. James's reaction was immediate and decisive. He didn't confront Sarah with shouting or accusations. He simply packed a suitcase, told her he was filing for divorce, and left the house that same day. He moved in with his brother temporarily. He later told me directly that he couldn't stay married to someone he couldn't trust. My parents' response to the situation was, to put it mildly, baffling. Instead of expressing any concern for James or acknowledging Sarah's wrongdoing, they called me. Their immediate demand was that I postpone my wedding not for a few weeks, but for an entire year. Their stated reason was that Sarah was going through a difficult period, and it would be insensitive and unfair to her if I proceeded with a lavish wedding celebration. They kept minimizing Sarah's actions, repeatedly saying things like, "It was just harmless flirting. Nothing actually happened." I vehemently disagreed. The planning, the intent behind the messages was enough. It was a betrayal of trust. I flatly refused their request. I explained, as calmly as I could, that postponing the wedding was simply not feasible. We had non-refundable deposits on the venue, the caterer, the photographer, everything. We would lose a significant amount of money that Lily and I had worked hard to save. Beyond the financial aspect, we had been meticulously planning this wedding for over a year. Invitations had been sent, travel arrangements had been made, and everything was in place. I also pointed out that Sarah's marital problems were not my responsibility, nor Lily's. My parents were furious. They issued an ultimatum, postpone the wedding, or they wouldn't attend. This wasn't as devastating a blow as they probably intended. My relationship with my parents has always been strained. They've consistently favored Sarah throughout our childhood and even into adulthood. She could do no wrong in their eyes, while I always felt like I was in the background. Simple things, like Sarah getting a new car for her 16th birthday while I got a used one a year later, were commonplace. There were countless examples of this dynamic, so their absence from the wedding, while not ideal, wasn't something that would make me change my plans. Lily and I had a long conversation about it and decided we would proceed with the wedding regardless of my parents' attendance. Now, for the second and perhaps more significant layer of this complicated situation, Lily's family's financial status. Her father founded a construction company several decades ago. It started small, but through hard work and smart decisions, it grew into a very successful business. They live comfortably, though they are not ostentatious about their wealth. My parents, in contrast, own and operate a small local bakery. They work incredibly hard, but they are far from wealthy. The core issue is my parents' behavior around people they perceive as affluent. They become overly attentive, almost sycophantic. They start dropping hints about needing investors for their business or try to leverage the connection for personal gain. I've witnessed this firsthand on numerous occasions. One particularly embarrassing incident involved them cornering a distant relative who happened to own a successful chain of car dealerships at a family gathering. They spent the entire evening pitching him a groundbreaking concept for a new type of artisan bread, clearly hoping for a financial investment. It was mortifying to watch. My sister, Sarah, unfortunately exhibits the exact same behavior. Knowing this, I deliberately kept my parents and Lily's family at a distance. I confided in Lily about my concerns early in our relationship, and she was completely understanding. Her father, thankfully, is a very grounded and unpretentious man. When we got engaged, we organized a single, carefully orchestrated dinner with both sets of parents. Lily prepped her family, asking them to downplay the scale and success of the construction company. Her father simply stated he worked in construction, while her mother mentioned she handled some of the administrative work. My parents, given their own background in the food industry, didn't probe further. They likely assumed it was a small, local contracting business. The dinner went smoothly, and I breathed a sigh of relief. The wedding itself was beautiful. Lily looked stunning, and we were both incredibly happy. My parents, true to their word, did not attend. But then the photos started appearing online. The construction company maintains an active social media presence, primarily for marketing purposes. They posted a few pictures from the wedding, congratulating Lily and her new husband. My parents, who apparently follow the company's page, probably hoping for some business connection, saw these posts. They immediately recognized Lily and me. They then did what I had feared all along. They Googled Lily's family's last name. The search results revealed the truth about the company's size and success, and that's when the real trouble began. So Reddit, AIT for intentionally concealing my wife's family's true financial situation from my parents, knowing their history of inappropriate behavior around wealthy individuals. Update 1. Thank you to everyone who has responded so far. The support and perspectives have been helpful. I'll address some common questions and provide an update on the events that have transpired since the wedding. First, to clarify the family dynamic, it's not just my immediate family. My extended family, with a few exceptions, tends to share similar values and behaviors. I only invited a select few relatives to the wedding, those cousins, aunts, and uncles, who I knew would be genuinely supportive and respectful. These relatives were aware of Lily's family's background and understood my reasons for maintaining a degree of secrecy. They've witnessed my parents' behavior firsthand over the years. The night of the wedding, my phone started buzzing incessantly. It was a barrage of calls and text messages from my parents. They were furious, accusing me of deception and betrayal. They claimed I had deliberately prevented them from networking with Lily's family, implying that I had somehow robbed them of a valuable business opportunity. They repeatedly used the word lied, insisting I had misrepresented Lily's family's true status. I ignored every call and text. Lily and I were celebrating our wedding night, and I refused to let their negativity intrude on that. A few days later, while I was out picking up some groceries, my parents showed up at our apartment. Lily, thinking it was me returning, opened the door. They pushed their way inside and immediately launched into a tirade. They demanded an explanation, repeating their accusations of deceit and manipulation. Lily, understandably shaken, tried to remain polite at first, explaining that it wasn't about their financial status but about their behavior. They wouldn't listen. They kept interrupting her, claiming they had done everything for me, and that I owed them this chance to connect with Lily's wealthy family. They were playing the victim card hard. I arrived home to find this chaotic scene. I immediately told my parents they needed to leave. They refused, escalating their accusations. They claimed I was ashamed of them, embarrassed by their humble background. I responded forcefully, but without yelling, that it wasn't their background I was ashamed of, it was their behavior. Their entitlement, their blatant attempts to exploit Lily's family for personal gain, were what I found embarrassing. I told them point blank that they were doing the bare minimum a parent could do. My mother started to cry, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. My father's face turned red, but he remained silent for a moment. I stated that opening the door was a mistake, and that they needed to go. My mother, before leaving, spat out that I was acting superior and holier than thou, that I had become a pretentious snob. They added that they were better off and that they regretted all the time they spent on me. Lily and I have had several long conversations about this. We've made a joint decision to cut off contact with my parents. They made their choices to skip the wedding, to harass us, to show up uninvited. We don't need that kind of toxic energy in our lives. We're leaving for our honeymoon shortly, which will provide a much-needed escape. And in an incredibly generous gesture, Lily's parents have gifted us a house. It's a modest but lovely home, perfect for starting our lives together. We're keeping the address strictly confidential. We'll only share it with a very small circle of trusted friends, and certainly not with anyone connected to my family. Lily's parents have been incredibly supportive throughout this ordeal. They initially offered to remove the wedding photos from the construction company's social media page, but I declined. I'm proud to be a part of their family, and I refuse to let my parents dictate our actions. I also reasoned that removing the photos would only fuel speculation and gossip, creating a different kind of problem. I've blocked my parents and Sarah's phone numbers. I've kept one line of communication open with a cousin who attended the wedding and who understands the situation. This will allow me to stay somewhat informed about my parents' activities without having direct contact. I'm realistically pessimistic about the likelihood of my parents leaving us alone during our honeymoon. They've proven themselves to be persistent in boundary crossing, but we're prepared to deal with whatever they throw our way. Update 2. The honeymoon was a wonderful escape. We deliberately chose a location with limited cell service, allowing us to truly disconnect and enjoy each other's company. It was exactly the respite we needed after the wedding drama. However, as I anticipated, the peace was short-lived. A couple of days before our scheduled return, I received a worried phone call from Lily's mother. Her voice was tight with anxiety. She informed me that my parents had shown up unannounced at their house. The method by which they obtained the address remains unknown, but it's clear that someone within our circle leaked the information. According to Lily's mother, my parents presented themselves as concerned relatives wanting to discuss my disappointing behavior with the adults. They claimed they wanted to resolve any misunderstandings and prevent future problems. The underlying motive, of course, was to manipulate Lily's parents and force a confrontation with me. They likely calculated that Lily's parents would contact us, drawing us into the drama. They also probably knew we were due to return from our honeymoon around that time. Lily and I were livid. We immediately booked the earliest available flight back home and drove directly to her parents' house. When we arrived, the scene was surreal. My parents were seated comfortably in the living room, acting as if they were welcome guests. My father-in-law, a man of few words, was visibly uncomfortable. His usual easygoing demeanor was replaced by a forced smile and strained politeness. He was trying to be polite, but failing miserably. I maintained my composure, though I was seething inside. I calmly but firmly told my parents that their presence at Lily's parents' house was completely inappropriate and unacceptable. I reiterated that I had no desire to engage in any discussion with them. They predictably repeated their rehearsed lines about wanting a family meeting to clear the air. I responded with equal predictability that I had no interest in any form of reconciliation. Then a surprising and significant shift occurred. Lily's parents, who had mostly remained silent until this point, intervened. They stated clearly and unequivocally that they were aware I had valid reasons for needing distance from my parents. They emphasized the importance of respecting my boundaries. And then Lily's father, in a particularly powerful moment, declared that I was now part of their family and they would fully support me. My parents were visibly taken aback. Their carefully constructed narrative had crumbled. They stammered, attempting to backtrack, but their words lacked conviction. They ultimately left without a major confrontation, muttering under their breath as they walked out the door. After they departed, we had a frank and open conversation with Lily's parents. They confirmed our suspicions about my parents' behavior. They described them as clingy, manipulative, and clearly attempting to portray me as the unreasonable party. This validated my long-held concerns and strengthened the bond between me and my new family. It's also become clear that someone I trusted has betrayed me by revealing Lily's parents' address. I have a strong suspicion about who it is. Update 3. It has been approximately 3 weeks since the unsettling incident at Lily's parents' home. The subsequent period had been thankfully quiet, a deceptive calm, as it turned out. Yesterday, my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. I hesitated, then answered. It was Sarah. She had acquired a new phone, likely a prepaid, untraceable one. I had missed several calls from this number previously, and now a series of text messages followed. The messages were accusatory and emotionally charged. Sarah blamed me for destroying the family. She claimed I was the sole cause of my parents' current distress. She labeled me heartless, selfish, and a litany of other unflattering terms. This, I realized, was a coordinated effort, a continuation of my parents' manipulative tactics, now using Sarah as their mouthpiece. This is the family dynamic in a nutshell, blaming me for their problems. Initially, I resisted the urge to respond. However, after reading through the increasingly vitriolic messages, I sent a brief text. I denied responsibility for their current situation. I pointed out, factually, that my parents had made a conscious decision not to attend my wedding. I reminded her that they had chosen to intrude upon Lily's parents' privacy. I stated plainly that they were operating within their own distorted reality. Sarah's response was a lengthy, rambling text, overflowing with accusations. She reiterated the heartless and selfish claims. She vehemently denied that she had ever cheated on James, insisting she was merely being falsely accused, implying her complete innocence in the matter. She emphasized repeatedly the depth of my parents' suffering, attempting to guilt me into submission. Sarah insisted she had done nothing wrong. I sent one final text message. I told Sarah that perhaps it was time for her and my parents to learn a lesson: accountability. I expressed a sense of relief that they were finally experiencing some consequences for their consistently poor choices. I specifically mentioned Sarah's need to take responsibility for her own actions. Her reply was a string of curses and angry pronouncements. I promptly blocked the burner phone number, effectively ending all communication. Those were my final words, a definitive severing of ties. Update 4. It has been almost a full year since our wedding day. We recently celebrated our first anniversary, a quiet and joyful occasion. Life since moving into our new home and establishing firm boundaries has been remarkably peaceful. We have had absolutely no contact with my parents, a situation that brings immense relief. I did eventually confirm the identity of the person who disclosed Lily's parents' address. It was, as I suspected, one of my cousins, the one I had previously considered trustworthy, and had even included in our wedding. She had maintained a close relationship with Sarah and apparently believed she was acting in a benevolent manner by attempting to mediate and reunite the family. She genuinely thought she was helping. I have since severed contact with this cousin as well. It was a painful but necessary step. The betrayal underscored the pervasive nature of the family's dysfunction. Regarding my parents and Sarah, I received an update indirectly through a different Aunt One who remains on good terms with me. Sarah's divorce was finalized. She subsequently relocated to a different city. My parents, having sold their bakery, decided to move with her, ostensibly to provide support and begin a new chapter. I express a sincere, albeit somewhat detached, wish for their well-being, primarily for my own peace of mind. Lily and I are actively planning to expand our family. We are hoping to become pregnant soon. This is a planned and deliberate decision. I am fully aware that the news of a pregnancy will inevitably reach my parents. I anticipate they will attempt to re-enter our lives at that point. We will address that challenge when it arises. For now, we are focused on the present, on our happiness, and on building our future together. We are content. We're looking forward with a quiet excitement to becoming parents. And that, ultimately, is all that truly matters.